Hey, this is Dr. Paul Firnhaber. It's Wednesday, time for 10 minutes of truth. So as usual today, I have an article out of a journal that I wanted, actually two articles out of two different journals that I want to talk about. The first article is out of the journal Neurology, October 7th of this year. So it's just came out like, a week ago or just a few days ago, actually. And the name of this article is Association Between Consumption of Low and No Calorie Artificial Sweeteners and Cognitive Decline, an 8-year prospective study. This study looks at the association between the consumption of low and no calorie sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, and cognitive decline. Now they looked at they wanted to calculate the combined and individual consumption of 7 of these artificial sweeteners. So they looked at aspartame, saccharin, acesulfame K, erythritol, xylitol, sorbitol, and tagatose. The study involved 12,772 participants, very large study, with a mean age of 52 years old, and they looked at the study over 8 years. Now, tagatose, which I never heard of before this study, is a naturally occurring low-calorie sugar sweetener that tastes similar to sucrose, but has only about a third of the calories and a minimal impact on blood sugar and insulin, which is pretty good. That actually sounds like a pretty decent alternative. What they found in this study is interesting. They said a healthy lifestyle has been linked to a decrease of cognitive decline and dementia. Well, no kidding. I mean, that almost goes without saying. High consumption of ultra-processed foods has been linked to accelerated cognitive decline and increased risk of dementia. And as I've said before, in this country, and you look at the average person who's eating the standard American diet, 65 to 75% of their calories comes from ultra-processed food. Sugar-free ultra-processed food generally contain low and no-calorie sweeteners as part of their composition, such as diet beverages, yogurts, snacks, low-calorie desserts, and milk-based beverages. The main source of these artificial sweeteners are low-calorie, ultra-processed foods such as light bread, yogurt, candy bars, flavored water, sodas, and energy drinks. The consumption of artificial sweeteners has been associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and depression. Consumption of artificially sweetened beverages, as well as consumption of saccharin, has been associated with a higher risk of dementia, and consumption of sucralose has been associated with decreased performance in the memory and executive function domains, possibly linked to microbiome changes, neuroinflammation, neurotoxicity from the metabolites of these artificial sweeteners when they're run through the liver and they're detoxified. So it's interesting that they're associating the cognitive decline with disruption in the gut bacteria due to these sweeteners. So you can't just put anything into your body and think your body's not going to know the difference. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Well, the body doesn't know the difference between Coke and water or between coffee and water. Yeah, it does. The body is very, very specific in what it can metabolize and utilize. This point says that except for tagatose, all the other investigated artificial sweeteners were associated with faster cognitive decline. Similar to previous evidence, we found saccharin consumption was associated with a faster decline in memory, verbal fluency, and global cognition. The magnitude of the association of the combined artificial sweetener intake with cognitive was larger in participants with diabetes than participants without diabetes. And what they found was that people with diabetes had a much higher, much faster rate of cognitive decline than people without diabetes. And they said consumption of 330 milliliters per day of artificially sweetened soft drinks is associated with an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Long-term consumption of artificial sweeteners is associated with impaired glucose tolerance and increased A1C. Consuming 4 grams per day of sucralose for 6 weeks is associated with worse performance in the memory and executive function domains. Patients with diabetes are also more likely to use artificial sweeteners as alternatives to refined sugar. So, this generated an editorial from the Department of Internal Medicine at Rush Medical College in Chicago, Illinois. And what they're saying here is that midlife dietary exposures decades before cognitive symptoms emerge may carry lifelong consequences for brain health. The widespread assumption that artificial sweeteners represent a safe sugar substitute may be misguided, especially given their ubiquity in products marketed as healthier alternatives. So they're saying here that, if you consume a lot of artificial sweeteners, like in midlife, like say 30 to 50, okay, that very possibly sets you up for faster cognitive decline as you get older. Now, this is something that should be shouted from the rooftops, and it just isn't. I'm hoping Robert Kennedy will look at things like this and bring this up, because it needs to be talked about. We need to have national conversations about these things, just like we're finally starting to have a national conversation about the cause of autism, which was almost not even allowed up until now. And you remember during COVID, we were not allowed to have a national conversation about the origins of COVID or the best treatments for COVID. And so now that we have somebody in the head of the Health and Human Services that actually is willing to talk about these things, this is really important. Now, before I go, I just want to look at another article. This was back in April of 2017. It said, sugar and artificially sweetened beverages and the risk of incident stroke and dementia. This is out of the journal Stroke. And I just want to read you one thing out of this article. It says, when comparing daily cumulative risk of artificial sweeteners from 0 per week, the hazard ratios were 2.96 for ischemic stroke and 2.89 for Alzheimer's. This means that drinking artificially sweetened beverages tripled the risk for suffering both stroke and Alzheimer's. So this should at least let you know that these things are seriously bad for you, that you should avoid all artificial sweeteners, that they harm your brain, and they actually increase your blood sugar. So this is Dr. Paul Firnhaber for 10 Minutes of Truth. We're in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our phone number is 402-488-2220. If we can help you at all with any of your health issues, please give us a call. I'll see you next week.